I'm the youngest of 6 kids. We grew up on the Cape Flats in Cape Town. And growing up on the Cape Flats was a beautiful and somewhat tragic experience. The beauty was the sense of community. It's something that I miss until today. During Ramadan, we would share barakat with our neighbors by sending samosas, pancakes, cook sisters, fritters, and we would get something in return. We'd play in the streets with the kids, and everybody knew everybody. But on the flip side, we were exposed to a lot of violence, poverty, and when a gunshot went off, we had to hit the ground. Without a shadow of a doubt, my siblings, my parents, and my older family members had it harder than me from a socioeconomic perspective. But from a very early age, it was drilled into us that we needed to be educated in order to get out of poverty and survive. My parents worked extremely hard to ensure that that happened. My mom got up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning to make roti and curry to sell. My dad did odd jobs transporting people who are differently abled. He was a messenger. We had a home shop. We did whatever we needed to do in order to survive and to get an education. From an early age, I felt a level of discomfort with what was set out predictably for me. I sat with that discomfort for many years. But there was a moment of recognition when I was very small. My dad bought me a law enforcement kit. It consisted of a toy gun and a sheriff's badge, and to date it is the best gift I've ever received. My mom was a bit upset because it wasn't a Barbie doll, but in that moment I felt seen, I felt understood, and I've taken that moment and I've held on to it for 30 years. I felt different from a very young age. If I wasn't the poorest kid in the group, I was being made fun of for my hair or being Muslim. And then as I grew up, I became a queer person in the room, the colored person in the room, or the only woman in the room. And for the longest time, I thought these are things that held me back. I was ashamed of them. And it took me many years to realize these are the most special parts about me. And these are the things that give me power. So my childhood was rather homogeneous from a racial perspective. I grew up in a colored area, I went to colored schools, I even went to an underprivileged university to study my law degree. But I only discovered privilege and a more diverse race experience when I entered the professional working space. The racial dynamic was totally different, and it was a cultural shock to me. I remember quite vividly when I sat across the table from one of my colleagues who asked me what I did for the holidays. I very excitedly said that I went camping with my family down the coast in a tent, and she looked quite puzzled, and I asked her, "What did you do?" And she said she was on a yacht for 2 weeks in Croatia. And this is when I became acutely aware of the lack of privilege. Being a queer woman of color creates a multitude of complexities and additional hurdles that one has to overcome in order to compete on the same footing as someone who's differently placed and more privileged. I've been called a secretary many times. People have presumed my personal circumstances many times, and I've been excluded many times because people are not necessarily aware of their own privilege or other people's circumstances. I heard a very profound explanation of the need for representation in a trans documentary called Disclosure. Children cannot be in the world if they cannot see that they are in the world. And this applies to adults as well. I have to see that I am in the world in order for me to know that I deserve to be here. I am very proudly South African. I love my country. You will see a flag behind me. I love our Constitution. It's incredibly progressive. It acknowledges me. And I want society, I want organizations, I want our behavior and our planning to catch up with that progressive nature. I think about what I've had to overcome just to get to this point in my life as a millennial. And I'd like to think that the hurdles that I've overcome, the doors that I've opened, will make the road for those who follow just a little bit easier. People are only going to be able to reach their full potential if they tap into their true, authentic selves. I know this from experience. Lots of people feel an adversity towards the LGBTQ community because of a lack of information, because of fear. And the best way to overcome that is to learn, is to engage, is to ask the questions. Switch on Netflix. There's RuPaul's Drag Race. There's Schitt's Creek. These are wonderful, wonderful stories of LGBTQ inclusion. Google, read books, speak to people, because we want to be included and we deserve love just as everybody else.